So we just said, okay, everything gets better. Where was there an end, okay, where you said, okay, things were not going up and up and up because otherwise...
Well, they were all going up and up and up, but a few interesting things kind of happened in the industry kind of at the same time. Backing up, up all the way up through Ultima 7, and the trend line was steadily up and up. But the first storm clouds began to show on the horizon about the time of Ultima 5, and this was when the IBM PC first launched. And the reason why I call that storm clouds is previous to that, there were other PCs, other personal computers coming into existence. So, we as Origin would tend to publish on all platforms. So we would do a port to the Atari 400, Atari 800, the Amiga, the ST, the Macintosh, all these things that would come out, we'd port to. And so when the IBM PC came out, we were just going to port to it like everything else. But all of our original creations were still on the Apple. And I remember very distinctly when the IBM PC first came out, it had this little chiclet keyboard, and it maybe had a little bit more memory and a little bit more speed, but otherwise physically seemed like an inferior machine to me. And I thought to myself, the consumers in the world are at least as smart as I am. They will pick the Apple over this piece of junk PC. And boy, was I wrong. And within 6 months, the Apple market fell off a cliff to basically zero. And it was obvious that even the other platforms we were porting to were diminishing very rapidly. And the only platform that was going to be relevant was going to be the PC. And none of our developers in-house were PC developers. And it was like, we are really in trouble. We had to go hire a whole bunch of new people who understood the PC. We had to delay the release of every product, including the next thing to come out was going to be Ultima 5. And prior to that, even though we were talking about discipline of getting things out reasonably on time these days, games are hard to ship on time, as you well know. Yeah. And so we said, we did a financial projection. I said, we're not going to make it till the release of the next game, Ultima 5. And we said, well, what are we going to do about that? We can walk away right now and have some pretty good money in our pocket. Or we can bet everything we have and try to get the next game out on time. And that everything meant I had to mortgage my house. My brother and I both borrowed $1 million each from the bank as a line of credit. And that would just get us to the launch date. And so we made the launch date. Maybe we'd get that money back. But if we didn't, not only would I lose the house that I had just built, but I'd be $1 million in debt. And the company would be wiped out. And that is a lot of stress to make it on time. And that game made it on time.
So you need always more pressure.
Yeah, well, but I actually think a bit of pressure in crisis is good. I mean, it keeps you pretty disciplined. If you in this case, it was physically painful discipline. So I mean, it wasn't. I wouldn't reflect on it. I wouldn't want to do it again.
How long did you work then? So overtime, like
this was still back in the days of lots of crunch time, which, by the way, we don't believe in as a company anymore. We can talk about that in a little bit. But but that was kind of my first big lesson of platform shifts are hard to predict. And even though I had conviction, I had clearly the wrong conviction. So I don't trust my conviction nearly as much since then. And the next crisis that came up pretty close on its heels was retail shelf space. Origin was always about number 10 of the top 10 companies in the world. And but as the industry got bigger and bigger, retail shelf space began to be purchased by companies. And so companies like EA would say, I'm just going to buy the front of the shelf at Best Buy and no one else gets it. And they could do that because they had a new product every month because they were a bigger company. When we only did an Ultima every couple of years and a Wing Commander every couple of years and some other smaller games, that's not enough. Games, yeah, that's not enough to own and pay for year-round shelf space. And so it became really clear that we were actually losing the ability to be seen in front of users. And so that made it obvious that we were too small as a company for the retail period. And that led us to become part of a bigger company, and we chose EA in this case. And that brings us up to what happened between Ultima 7 and Ultima 8. So Origin was acquired by EA during Ultima 7. And there's actually some knocks about EA in Ultima 7. In Ultima 7, the evil presence of the Guardian, the bad guy, is felt through his transmitters, the sphere, the cube, and the tetrahedron, which are the EA logo symbols. And so when they were acquiring us, we had to confess to them. We said, how do you feel about the fact that you are the essence of evil in our game? And they thought, that's good fun. Go ahead.
Evil's good.
Evil's good. And but afterwards, we had heart-to-heart discussions about how do you do game development, because we had done our own games and felt we had confidence in our process, but they had made a bigger company. They had arguably, measurably more success than we did. And one of the things that we would talk about was release dates. And they would make the argument, they'd say, look, imagine our Madden football games. We keep the engine in development year-round, and we make sure that before the beginning of football season, we fork a piece of it off, and we make a Madden 95 or Madden 96 or whatever year it is to make sure that we have a Madden available at the beginning of every football season. And the fact that we have it available on such a regular cadence means the fans always have a new version of this game available, and we think that, and we watch you with Ultimas, and you take 2 or 3 years, and even then you're usually late on top of that, and we can't even start marketing it because you'll be so much later that we'll have wasted all the marketing money, and we can't do it. We can't spend it twice, and we have to start far enough ahead. And so they said, look, I was working on Ultima 8, and they actually said, look, we sincerely believe that it is better for you to cut content out of this game in order to make the date that we've now agreed on come hell or high water. And I went, okay, I agree. I at least agreed to do it. And so Ultima 8 had a world and story that it was originally intended to be about 4 times larger than it actually shipped with. Because, as you might imagine, when you start cutting to make a date, you actually have to cut a lot more than just a little polish on the edge. You actually have to cut into the meat a fair bit if you're behind. Anything that's only part done, you have to just remove it entirely. And so Ultima 8 is missing a huge chunk of its intended scope and a huge chunk of its intended polish. And so when it launched, it had a lot of bugs, got a lot of criticism, and fell well short of getting my intended marker for it, despite the fact that I really still like the game. I really enjoy it a lot. I think, and once we patched it, was fortunately this is right at the beginning of the internet, so we could just begin to do patches. We fixed those bugs, and in the end, I think it would turn out to be a fine game. But the launch was screwed up because of me. It didn't make me do it. No one twisted my arm. Nobody held a gun to my head. I agreed to it, but it was a tragic error.
So do you feel yourself, cut it in creativity, or what was it at the end of the day? What was the most disappointment out of that? I mean, because you could not deliver this to your fans as it was planned, or was it more the fight against EA because of the deadlines? I mean,
no, it wasn't the fight against EA, because again, I didn't feel like it was a fight. I didn't have an argumentative relationship with EA at that time. I just made a bad decision. And it'd be easy to blame EA for this, but in this case, I actually really don't. I mean, they were giving me. I blame myself. In this case, they really were giving me the advice that had worked for them, and they were giving it to me with sincere intent. It was just not the right move for my kind of game. So I was really just disappointed in myself for making the decision, and disappointed that when people reacted like there was probably the biggest error was when you would jump in this game in Ultima 8. You would jump, I'll call it a meter or two, might have been 2 meters forward. Always. No matter which way you faced, when you jump 2 meters. The problem was the game included things like jumping from stone to stone in a pit of lava. And if you couldn't visually tell that was 2 meters, you would often over or under jump. And so you'd end up in the lava, even though you were trying not to. We quickly changed that with the patch to where you just pointed where you want to jump. And when you said jump, you would jump to that. So as long as it was within 2 meters, you would jump exactly to the point you pointed at. And then the game was much better. But so just that little simple change was enough to profoundly change the gameplay experience. And that's just because we didn't have time at the end to polish it.
So where's the Ultima series coming? And then later on, okay, what was the next part? You said, okay, that was the climax more or less. And where did it go there?
So now became, so I mentioned that for the Ultima 8, it was just my own fault, right? But I listened, took well-intended advice, but then made the mistake of going with it. After that, I kind of said, I'm not going to take bad advice anymore. I'm not going to, whatever I said, for better or worse, you have to live or die by whatever you believe. I'm going to say from now on, I'm going to do it my way or the highway, so to speak. And maybe too much to an extreme, but that really became my attitude. So the place that manifested most the best and immediately out on the heels of Ultima 8 was Ultima Online. So this was in 1995, approximately, when Ultima 8 was wrapped and we were getting started on Ultima 9, and we were starting on Ultima Online. And EA was very interested in Ultima 9 at this moment, and they were completely disinterested in Ultima Online. And the logic was as follows. So EA, as many companies do, had a twice yearly pitch event where anybody that had an idea for a game would put together a binder with the game design, its staffing plans and needs, and therefore the costs, and a sales and marketing plan that you would get by working with sales and marketing to put some projections. As that would tell you not only about the game, but what they really cared about was the cost and the benefit, right? So you would say, okay, this game's going to cost me $1 million, and sales projects to learn $5 million, so that might be a good bet. 1 to 5, good bet. Well, we put together this. We saw that we'd always been looking at doing an online game, but the only online games previously were dial-up BBS type games that you generally paid for by the hour, and they were very expensive to play, and the total revenues for most of those games were pretty light. And so even though there were some examples, there were the text MUDs and there were some graphical MUDs, and games like Genie Air Warriors was out, so you even had a little simple dogfighting game. Those only had 5,000 to 10,000 users maximum. And while they could make a business out of it because they spent so little, the games were so graphically light, we didn't feel that was where we wanted to go. We thought, I want to make an Ultima. So as soon as we can make a full-blown Ultima, then that's when we're going to do it. And the World Wide Web was just starting in about 1995.
So there was no proof that it's a success.
There's no evidence. Exactly. Sales and marketing has no data by which to make a projection.
And it's still that way.
And so we went to EA with our Ultima Online design document saying, now is the time. We've been waiting for 20 years for this. Now is the time. And EA said, well, the biggest selling game in history has had 15,000 subscribers or players. Let's say you can do twice as good as history. Let's say you can get to 30,000. That would already be probably unachievable, but we'll give it to you. And of course, if you do that calculus, it doesn't make money. So they said no. 6 months later came by, and we pitched the same game again. The internet's now growing. We said, look, we're going to miss this window. We better do it now. They said no. 6 months later, before the third time, we came back. Same game, same plan, same projections from the sales and marketing. They still said no. And then I did the thing which sort of ended my career with EA. I basically said, you guys are wrong. We're not leaving the room. We're literally, your budget for us down at Origin is whatever it was, 10, 20, $50 million a year. I can't remember. I said, all we need is like $250,000 and we can build the prototype of this. And for $1 million, we could probably build the whole game because we're building it on top of technology that already existed in early Ultima. The budget we're asking for is noise in contrast to the whole company. We basically demand that you let us make this game. And to which they kept saying no. And we did the very childish, we're going to stomp our feet and hold our breath until you let us do this. And finally, Larry Probst, I had a piece of paper prepared that said, you approve of us going over budget by $250,000 to build this prototype. And finally, he just scribbled on it and threw it at me.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. And,
shut up.
But that was really, I really believe that is the day that my long-term career at EA ended. Because I was no longer a team player.
You crossed the line.
I'd crossed the line. However, what's interesting about that is we went and made the prototype, and the very first website that EA ever had was the Ultima Online website, where we announced the project and we said, we need some beta testers, but we have to send you a CD because the internet's too slow to download it. Yeah. And so we need you to send us $5 for the privilege of being a beta tester of this prototype. And within a week, 50,000 people signed up. And so EA goes, I get it.
There's some money made.
I get it. And so suddenly we went from the bastard stepchild product that nobody wanted to the most important thing happening EA worldwide. Not only did the money buckets, start flowing in, but so did the management help, which usually was not help. We spent, way more than we intended to. So we expanded the project by about another year and another couple $1 million. But when it finally did ship, it actually became the fastest selling PC game in Origin and EA history by a long shot. In fact, Ultima Online outsold all the previous Ultimas combined by a multiple. So it obviously was a huge success. Interestingly, during that period, EA switched from wanting Ultima 9 and not UO to saying they no longer wanted Ultima 9 and only wanted UO. And then on
how hard did you fight for Ultima 9 then?
Completely. That's what ended my time at EA. Is I basically said, look, you were telling me the opposite not so long ago, and I proved that this was a good thing. I have a trilogy of trilogies. I created a storyline that started in Ultima 7 and 8 that was going to wrap up in Ultima 9. I'm going, you're not going to cut me off from finishing my trilogy of trilogies that you've changed your mind about, not me. And so I did another one of these, stomp my feet, hold my breath, I'm finishing Ultima 9. And then that was the end of my career with EA. So yeah, I shipped Ultima 9 and then I was pushed out.
Okay. So what was the most successful Ultima, or which Ultima was that you really were proud of?
Well, to me, there's more than one because they're different. So my three favorites are Ultima 4 for its vision about storytelling to go beyond fighting monsters and collecting treasure, and the use of the word avatar and the inclusion of ethical parables. I still think of that as a very visionary moment. I mean, I knew it's another one of these times, by the way, where everyone I was working with, my brother and family and other people, thought I was doing a bad idea. They actually, that deserves a moment to dwell on. Ultima 3 being Origin's first product, it's the first time I got fan mail, because previously it would have gone to California Pacific or Sierra, and so I never saw it. Suddenly with Ultima 3, I realized people were reading into my games things I never thought was there. And they found meaning, supposedly, in little moments that I had just put in as, junk. And I said, wow, I need to pay attention to the content that I'm putting in there. And that's what actually started me on this virtuous avatar stuff, was because I realized how people were not playing like a hero. They were killing all the villagers and stealing from all the shops, and they were doing all these things that were not the hero of the story. And I said, well, they shouldn't win if they're not the hero of the story. And so I started creating this game that would monitor your behavior, and if you were behaving badly, you couldn't win. And the rest of my QA department and the rest of my team members were all going like, Richard, you've got all these letters from people telling you how they like to play the game, and you're about to tell them they will lose if they play the way that they like to play. That's a terrible idea. And I said, no, I really believe in this, and I did it despite literally having no support within my immediate family and company. And that was the first #1 best-selling game I made, was Ultima 4. I feel similarly about Ultima 7. Ultima 7 was the most completely realized world. You guys were talking about in your Townsman's game how all the little guys have virtual lives. They run around, they go to the bar, they wake up in the morning, go all these things. Well, Ultima 7 we really started this in Ultima 4, but by the time we get to Ultima 7, those people have truly complete lives that they live out. And through 4 to 7, where 7 was the pinnacle of that realization, Ultima was on the forefront of creating these sandbox games. That term didn't even exist back then. But that's really where this, I think, comes from, and I really enjoyed it in Townsman all the way. The fact that you can pick up a fish and drop it on the land, all that kind of stuff. I'm going, that's that is the Ultima design mythology, or sensibility. And so that game felt very homey to me because it lives up to this. If you're going to do it, it needs to all be true. The reality of what you're crafting has to be complete, which Townsman does very, very extremely well. So anyway, Ultima 7 is another one of my favorites, and then Ultima Online. Those are for reasons I've already kind of described in the story. And so I think those are really the three best things I've done so far.
So let's sum up this kind of episode right now. I think what we have seen is that we have parallels here for the world of gaming today, because you bet once on the wrong platform with the Apple and the IBM PC, and on the other side, EA doesn't really recognize, there's something new coming up with the internet, there's a biggie coming up, and you created more or less one of the first games out there, which is mass multiplayer, etc. You had the vision, but not EA. So I think at the end of the day, you have always to have a look on other platforms and other technologies. I think this is the biggest learning, actually, or?
No, I agree. And in fact, that's one of the things, as we were looking at, the work you all are doing here, both on the Switch and in VR, I can tell you have that same dedication to understanding the platform and what can be done uniquely, experientially with that platform to really move things ahead. It can't be the stuff that's been done before. It can't be things you've done before. You've always got to sit down and go, what can I do to kind of move the gameplay experience up to something that people that's powerful and unique for people to experience with our new game.
But still a high risk at the end of the day.
It is.
Yeah, because hunting those blue oceans are quite expensive.
Yeah,
I can tell you.
yeah, and and if you pick the wrong platform or if you pick the wrong gameplay experience, you might miss the mark. But having missed the mark a couple times myself, you go, okay, you take your kick in the pants. You go like, how did I screw it up? Oh, don't be so confident in your own predictions. Make sure you plan for cushion to recover and move to the platform that does win out if you need to. But that's how it changes how you plan your business.
So did you expect it that EA will stay alive and getting even stronger than they were in your time?
Yes, to be honest. I mean, the things that EA does well, they do very well. They're a very disciplined, very hardworking company, but I think it works specifically well or particularly well for certain kinds of products. So sports games, I think they do particularly great. There are certain kinds of arcade games that I think they also do extremely well. But there are things they do very poorly, and the thing I think they do poorly isn't just representative origin, but about tons of other studios they've acquired and killed. Which is if something doesn't fit their production model, they have historically not been good at repeating it.
Yep.
And I think they know that, by the way, now. They at least just talk like they're trying to address that. So but they're doing fine. So as much as we all love to, or at least I enjoy blaming EA or kicking EA for some pain in the past. They're a great company and have done some really great work in their niche.
Okay, so enough talking about EA. I think let's talk about your new venture.
Yeah, let's
in the next
talk about
episode.
Some whiskey.
Okay. Lars, did you play one of those games in these old days? I mean, when was
you old enough?
Yeah.
No, you grew up.
I'm old enough for that. So.